Oh, wrong keyboard. So there's a new unit in the education building called the Teaching and Learning Exchange. And these are a few of the workshops that we're developing. And we're more than willing to tailor them to different department and faculty needs. Such as intelligent agents, which is automated communication and tracking of your students. Online rooms, Skype, it's similar as a tool. Gradebook, there's the simple version of Gradebook, and then you can get quite complicated in your evaluation schemes, and Gradebook can actually help you deal with those items. And then communication and rubrics. So if you ever forget how to do something, there's a support center, and they're great, friendly people. They have better hours than I do, so they're easier to get a hold of, and there's also more of them. There's how-to guides. Also, if you just want to explore how to set up things. D2L, online rooms, web capture, and stuff like that. And we have consultation services available to you. Whether it's media, instructional design, teaching consultations, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of resources to help you out. All right. So one of the goals that I've been reading up on some of the literature is that students are expecting anywhere from 20 to 80% of on-campus course material to be online, whether that's your syllabus, your grade book, supplementary materials, or other interactive materials. So I figured we'd take a look at some of the easy things to implement, and if there's any questions you have on specific items, we'll address them that way. And the good news is that once you set up a shell in D2L, you don't have to reset it up every semester. It can be carried over and imported. So you do the work once, and then you just modify as the semesters go on. Oops. So these are some of the easy things to add. One of the reasons why I brought up adding your dates is there's a calendar tool in D2L, and there's a new app coming out, and we're hoping to have it sometime in January or April, in which it'll pull data from all the students' courses, and they'll be able to see what's due, when it's due, if they're behind, and it'll amalgamate the course content to say, oh, if they're thinking about going out on a party and they've got 6 things due in the next 3 days, hopefully they'll change their minds on that.
Sorry.
Yeah. So those are some of the easier ones. Is there any of those that you'd like to discuss right now? Are they all pretty much straightforward?
Yes. Actually, I do have one question, I suppose, or observation. I've been doing distance courses for probably 15 years. And this is probably more relevant to your intro when you're talking about the resources. The biggest problem is I cannot find who to talk to in Delft or now CITL, except some people who I kind of know, and that's it. I mean, all the things that are there, or you can go here, you can go there, etc. But you can't actually find out who does what.
Or who specializes in what area?
Sorry?
Like who specializes in what area?
Yeah, so there's no directory that says, who can I go and ask about this? Now, I agree, the way it's set up, or unless it's been changed recently, is you call this number for technical assistance, and you get put in a queue, and then somebody kind of comes back later. But if I'm doing something, I kind of want to talk to somebody about it.
Yes.
It's a slightly different. It's like there's this different way of looking at the connection on both sides.
Yeah.
And so mostly I end up doing stuff. You can't find out who's gonna, right? Or I ask the people I work with on one thing and they say, well, that's not really my job, but I'll tell you how to do it. Well, okay, I don't care what their job is in that respect.
Yeah.
Send me an email.
Right? I mean, I do, because they're doing me a favour. But it's, there's some kind of communication thing, in my experience over the years, that you guys could look at. And I talk to people in Dell and say, well, do you do this? And they'll say, no, somebody does it. I'll say who? They say, I don't know. I mean,
Yes.
I'm not joking.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of a,
Yeah, there's a map of who's the key person for which target to hit.
well, it's something to do with the telephone system, because most of the departments, it's very, very hard to find the list of the list in the department of who does what. You can find names,
Yes.
but that's useless because you don't know what they do. What you want to talk about, you can't find.
Yeah, the profiles, some departments within DELTS are
I'm sorry?
some of the profiles of the people working there are starting to be developed now. It is on our
I don't want a
radar.
profile, I
Yeah.
just want to
But
know
no,
who
that'll
they
give
are.
you who they are, what they do,
Send me
and
an email
things
first,
like that.
Michael, and then I can, I might be able to address it from this end. And if it's not that, then I'll know who to be able to get in contact with.
yeah. But the support center, yeah, they're very good at helping you set up your Dropbox. But if it's a grade book, then you probably want to speak to myself or Denise Vincent and
You
things
got
like
that.
that. Yeah.
I
Yes.
know. But
Yeah.
there's all this problem about, oh well, this is a development course and now it's being run, you have to go to somebody else. Well, who? Don't know.
Okay.
Could I ask you a question on the evaluation, Justin?
Yes.
I just use the grade book to record my grades. Can you
Okay.
just speak a little bit about how it can help with the strategy piece? Or are you going to do that next?
Oh, what do you, by strategy as
Yeah,
in?
where you say you're depending on evaluation strategy.
Yeah, depending on how you grade your students, like there's the simple, you've got your midterm and your final and maybe a couple of assignments.
And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, so that's a basic setup.
Okay.
You can develop directed learning path. So if a student isn't too fond of presentations, you can create longer papers. And then depending on how they interact with the course materials, the grade book will match up, okay, they did a short paper, long presentation, and midterm, so their grade scheme is this. The other person did
So it's a
a
very,
long presentation, short
varied
paper.
evaluation depending on
Yeah.
the strengths and preferences of each student.
Yeah, you can set it up that way. And then, yeah, depending on how the student interacts through release conditions and stuff like that,
So
the
you're
grade
trying to
book will
avoid
adjust.
doing what you don't want to do and aren't good at.
Potentially.
As a student, and then you're only working on your strengths as opposed to your weaknesses.
Yeah, or you, depending on your course objectives, you could set them as collaboration skills or presentation skills, and they can choose.
And that's all within the grade book. I haven't looked at it
It'll
obviously deeply.
some of the stuff will expand beyond the grade book. So you'll have to use your Dropbox folder, discussion forums, and to help trigger which grade book and scheme to follow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is not CITL, but this would be whoever made D2L. And I have a lot of criticisms of that program. And there's ways it could be better. And if you're talking about the grade book, for example, I cannot enter ABS for someone missing a test. It doesn't accept anything that's other than a number. So I have to have a little separate spreadsheet to keep track of little things like that.
Okay.
So it's just, I don't even know how you, in this organization, how you put new ideas. Somebody has to say to D2L, if we have an idea for an improvement for the next version, here are some ideas.
Okay. Yes, there is actually a little bit. There's a community at D2L, and you can register in there and create. There's they call it PI. I forget what it stands for, but the interchanging of ideas.
Oh.
So if you have a recommendation for a grade book and you can implement it, or somebody might have already posted it, and then you can vote for it, and then the higher votes it gets, the chances are it'll get implemented.
All right.
But I'll take a look at letters, because there are a few strategies where that is possible, but it's not, the problem is when it comes to the final grades. You can't have a letter there. It has to be numerical.
Right. although we submit them to the registrar's office with things like.
Yeah, if you
IMC or
submit it
APS.
to the registrar's office is one thing, but going through Banner and the D2L grades to Banner widget, it has to be numerical. Yeah. So these ones require a little bit more planning, a little bit more thought, but they're not that difficult to do. And you can either do it on yourself or with support. So developing a more complicated grade book. I definitely recommend, if you have ideas you want to implement, sit down with myself or Denise, and we can definitely help you set that up. Or we could even cover it in a grade book. I believe there's a workshop coming up in October that I've been asked to come in for your faculty on the grade book, and we can address those kinds of issues there too. There's like just different ways of doing the quizzes, discussion forums. Again, intelligent agents and rubrics, they take a little bit of time. What you offer a rubric to a first-year student and what you can do with a rubric for a fourth-year student, of course, very different because you'll have larger or smaller class sizes. So more time you can spend on that type of tool. And you can also help set it up for your teaching dossier. So if you're into that type of thing.
Just one quick comment on quizzes, particularly if you're using multiple choice quizzes and if you're using the test bank that comes with the textbooks. Change the questions slightly, adjust them, because we're running into a very interesting situation where the test banks are available online and some students are memorizing the entire test bank. And it's creating a unique situation. For the last 2 semesters, an online course that I've been doing, I had half the grade was multiple choice on the exam, and the other half was long answers. And I had a number of students before I started to tweak and learn that they were sort of memorizing that were getting 49 out of 50 on the multiple choice and 3 out of 50 on the long answer. So it's like when you see those dichotomies, it's really important to make sure that we're not just taking the quizzes as they come from the grade book and putting them in and using the same quizzes or same exam questions again and again. You know, mix them up, you know, rotate them, you know, change some of the wording, change which is going to be the right answer, you know, because there is a there's a growing issue with that is starting to become more prevalent.
Yes.
Can you tell me what you mean by teaching dossier a little bit more?
Teaching dossier, I don't specialize in that subject matter. That's Alison Hayek.
Okay.
And she can sit down and discuss the framework. Usually it's through the Canadian University Association, and they have a very defined mechanism. But some faculties are already starting to ask you to send your promotion and tenure file through D2L. So the teaching dossier, starting it now, is just an easier step for the future.
And Allison will be delivering a presentation this fall for people that are sort of working on the PNT files and working on building their teaching dossiers. I just was in email communication with her today. We were in communication with her before the summer break, but she will be coming in the fall and delivering a presentation on assistant faculty on that.
I was just wondering if that was a teaching dossier for students, but it's ended for our own promotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yourself?
The exams or quizzes online, am I correct in thinking that there's a Senate regulation that says that if you do an exam of any kind, it has to be invigilated? And is that a problem because you're saying do this online and they're not invigilated?
Yeah,
No, I could be wrong.
for here, I'm just recommending practice quizzes and tests because this is we're discussing on-campus courses. So for one thing on that issue, you could do memorization.
Because you can do on D2L, you can actually set it up so that they can actually do.
Yeah, and it gets automatically graded and populated to the grade book.
Those are invigilated now. If they're doing a midterm or final exam, it's done through online invigilation. There's people that are monitoring through the webcam and specific software that they have to use to ensure that it is. So, yes, online invigilation launched about a year ago.
That's for out of province students only.
Yes.
Yes.
Online proctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other way around is like if you call it a test, it has to be proctored. If it's a quiz, it doesn't have to.
Yeah. Well, I believe it's called a timed online assignment.
Yeah.
So, and then there's specific strategies you have to use, such as randomizing your questions, you're randomizing your answers, when you release feedback and things like that. So yeah, that's why it's a little bit more complicated setting up your quizzes and things like that.
One of the big things for your online classes where those practice quizzes can be utilized is sort of from a prescriptive teaching standpoint. So if you've given students assignments or preparation readings, you know, a couple of days before they're going to have the class that's going to apply to that, they do a quiz online, which makes up a small percentage of their mark. But based on the questions that everybody in the class is getting right, there's no sense in you beating that same issue in class. But if you've got a particular topic that only 2 students in your class actually got right, you may want to allocate a little bit more time in your class to that particular area because you've been able to ascertain that there's a weakness on that. And so it's called prescriptive teaching, where it's like you don't just have your canned presentation that you do, you focus on what the needs are of that particular group of students by giving them these pre-class quizzes so you can identify specific target areas to adjust your time allocation or adjust your focus of your in-class sessions.
And the statistic tool for the quizzes in D2L has improved a fair bit too on how students are doing. So if you want, I can show you an example of that at the end of the session. So some of the more advanced features, again, this starts taking more time and probably more collaboration amongst not only with SIDs and myself, but also other faculty members. So branching case scenarios, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that being in business. You give an real life example. You can map those out in the survey tool and have branching scenarios. So if you give a paragraph, students have choices A, B, C, D. If they choose D, they have a completely different set of questions and scenarios to follow had they chosen suggestion A. And you can map that completely out. And then you can use other tools to make it more graphically appeasing, such as Storyline or Captivate. The competencies and learning objectives, these can be mapped all the way from their first year to their 4th year, and then at the end of their graduation, a combined list. So if you're taking a look at some of the soft skills, such as collaborative learning, which people are saying they're going to start badging those, and I think you can do it already with Firefox. There's an app called Backpack, and then that exports to LinkedIn. So one of the future thought leaders is suggesting that this is going to be a growing trend in universities. And I believe engineering is already, because they have to be accredited, they're already mapping their entire faculty out. Yeah, so if you want to do flipped classrooms, D2L is a great place to switch the content around. One professor is doing, for videos, he's doing problem-based learning in his class. And then once he gets to, I guess, the perfect example that he wants in his classroom, as he videotapes it, he'll be exporting that to D2L. So it's an additional resource, and then he'll start a different problem in class.
My understanding is if you video class, you have to get students to sign a form which is available from CITL,
Yeah.
allowing the release of that video. You can't do it unless every student in the class has signed the form. Is that correct?
I assume it'd be similar to research ethics. That yes, you would have to get a fair bit. And then there might be a gray scale between what's being released
No, it's,
in D2L as a closed environment
no,
and what's being released
it's
on
loaded.
YouTube.
My understanding is if it's loaded on D2L,
Yeah.
they all have to sign. They all have to sign the form.
Yeah.
Not if it's only being used within that particular class section. If it's being used where other class sections would be able to see it, then they need to be aware that you're filming and that it's going to be recorded for that, so that if they don't want to make a comment, they can refrain from making that
No,
comment.
they have to sign off if they're physically present, because
if they're in the video. But if the camera is only on you and not on them, and they're not physically in the video,
Okay.
and they know that you're recording, if they choose not to make a comment, they know that it's gonna be on that video and will be disclosed to others. If you're doing something that is only gonna be distributed within the D2L shell for that class, then it's no different than them being in class and sharing what's going on. So whether it's done through video or otherwise, there's no issue with that. But it's if you've got somebody on camera or somebody making a comment on camera that you're then going to share with other classes that goes beyond their expectation of privacy and communication. And I will commend what's gone on with Desire to Learn. Because a number of years ago, when I was uploading my recorded video presentations, I gave up and started to just use YouTube because it would take like 6 hours to upload a simple video. Now the upload speeds for being able to upload videos into D2L is actually faster than uploading them onto YouTube. So, with the same quality video, they've got much better bandwidth for dealing with upload capabilities and saving it. The advantage of having the videos if you're flipping the classroom and having your pre-recorded presentations on the D2L shell as opposed to on a private YouTube or as an unlisted YouTube video is you've got trackability. So you can see where people, what they've done, what they've gone. For example, I had some students that were complaining that my evaluation of one of their assignments was overly harsh. And because there was only like 4 out of the class that passed. And so they said, well, you're marking too harshly. And I said, no, only 5 of you in the class actually watched the tutorial videos that showed you exactly how to do the assignment. Of those, they passed. Yeah. So it's sort of one of those things where it gives you the ability to monitor what's going on and to realize when your students may be running into trouble if you want to sort of say you're getting into a bit of a situation here.
You mentioned flipped classrooms.
Yes.
The problem with that philosophy isn't the technology on D2L. The problem is getting students in the mindset that they're actually going to do it that way. And so I tried it for 1 term in Business 2400. It wasn't a success. What tended to happen was the student boycotted the class. They weren't prepared, so they decided not to come. And it was just the worst of all worlds. And I've now gone back to something that's, I'm trying to keep the flipped thing a little bit, so it might be 2/3 to 3/4 traditional lecture, and leave time at the end for them to work on a problem in like a homework mode. But that's the real challenges aren't maybe technological; they're human.
Yeah, where the flipped classrooms are going to be really effective is the final year courses, providing, of course, in the first year interviews, like you suggested, only 10-15 minutes is flipped. And things like that. So they actually get the culture, they get the skills and the practice. Because throwing them into the deep end of a swimming pool, most of them can't swim.
The way that you can help that, David, is to do the prescriptive part. So do the flipped classroom and then do the prescriptive quizzes that count towards marks that are based on those flipped presentations.
Yeah.
And then you apply that theory in your classroom. So there's actually some mechanism, because some of the earlier students in their degree may sort of like, if there's not a physical grade attached to it, I'm doing that.
Yeah, right.
Are there any other questions regarding some of these?
I guess I'll throw out something that's
Okay.
always bothered me. We have more and more of these things for tracking students and telling them what to do. So we give them bite-sized chunks and we measure it and we figure it out. We give them another bite-sized chunk and so on. They don't actually have to really think about what they really want to learn or how to learn, because it's all done for them. And I just wonder whether, with all this stuff, we're missing out on basically the basics of critical thinking. And just, because throw it at them and say, figure it out. If you can figure it out, you pass, and if you don't, you fail. Duh. Now, is that might be
teach
a
people how
little
to
bit.
swim that way too, Michael.
Yeah, no, but he's from a lifebelt. Yeah, I know, but you give him a lifebelt.
But yes, but yeah, so that comes into how you design around the tools. The tools don't create that situation. How you choose to use the tools and implement them creates that
I
situation.
just wonder, we having to, I simply flag it because we got the pressure to use the tool. I'm seeing it in, I'm doing the distance courses and whatever, and yeah, some of them are useful. But now you've got to measure them and keep track and all of this. And I think, isn't that their responsibility?
Yeah, and that's where starting to map certain things out comes a lot better because, yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of overemphasis on instructional design. Like, this is how people learn, so we chunk it up, and then they expect everything to be chunked for them. Rather than, okay, in this course, we're showing you how to chunk it. Start practicing it on yourself, so when you get to the 400 level, here's the paper, you figure it out.
I teach the 7,000 level, they're still asking me to figure it out for them.
But yeah, it's how you slowly scaffold things and then start moving away those safety structures. And that's a community effort on how you develop it. So this is just a basic idea of potentially how you can introduce certain things. It starts at the ground level. Mostly for such as discussion forums, you just want them to post something, reply, and make a few healthy comments. You're not really getting into the grit of, okay, was this thought-provoking? Because of course, they're still first-year students. Whereas the fourth year, you can create an advanced rubric dissecting what their comments are, what their posts are, extended debates and things like that. So it's just, yeah, slowly trying to figure out how to map that out for your faculty's needs.
Is this based on Bloom's taxonomy?
No.
Well, like
Bloom's
you-
taxonomy will fit into
Yeah,
it.
but I get the sense that if we follow Bloom's taxonomy, and that's in a lot of curriculum planning and so on, then you're never going to ask the students to do anything that demands thought until the end of the program. Actually, it might not be a bad idea to get them to do it at the beginning.
Yeah.
But
It's
that's
just
all for everyone.
your expectations of what that creative and evaluative thoughts are. And you grade them accordingly, and you use the grading scheme reflective to their skill set. But yeah, no, there's no reason why you can't apply formative thinking in first year.
It's part of your individual course design. That's not part of what D2L is designed to do. That's how you choose to use the tool and what you do in your applying your skills as an educator into the course to help achieve the objectives.
Yeah. But D2L is capable of mapping certain skills, such as their competencies and learning objectives, throughout their entire university program. It just requires a different setup for your faculty, so it's layered rather than flatlined, and then figuring out what competencies and objectives you want to measure in your students. So I can imagine that would be a very healthy debate. Okay. So that sums up pretty much what I wanted to cover, and then if there's any specific questions or demonstrations you guys would like to see within D12, hopefully I'll be able to pop that out right now. Yes?
I have a question about the consultation service or solutions. Is
Right.
that, is there much of a lead time? If you want to meet with somebody, should you say, how many months between when your course is being offered and when you should meet with an expert or?
The sooner the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they busy? I guess that's my other question.
The short answer to that question is definitely yes. So that's why the sooner you contact us, because when it comes to 2 or 3 weeks before a semester starts, that's when everybody's giving us content, asking us changes, surprise workshops, you name it. So it's really challenging, but you contact us 3 or 4 months before the semester starts. Most faculty are leaving us alone at that point in time. So we can definitely give you a lot of attention.
Cycles, right?
Yeah. Yes.
maybe Lyle may be better to answer this, but D2L is effectively almost like a walled garden in some ways, and how can we, is it just as easy as posting links to outside content that may be going on, like YouTube videos, Lyle, or something like that, or is there a better way than just putting in a link that may break or may adapt or may change, especially if we're copying things over from term to term to term?
When you copy external resources, every semester it's a good idea to go through them, make sure they're all consistent. There's two things to consider with external content, is the HTTP signal. If it's HTTPS, you can host it within your shell and it'll be tracked. If it's HTTP, unfortunately it has to open outside of D2L for security reasons, and you will not be able to confirm whether or not your students have reviewed the material.
So say we wanted a student to review a documentary on Netflix, for example. There's no way that we can track them and say, yes, I watched the video.
If it was on YouTube, yes.
But no.
Netflix, it's a little bit challenging because that's a closed environment also. So.
But we could do it with YouTube?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And
Be interested to know how
the
you
new
do that.
embedding feature within D2L is much more efficient. So now
Say that again, I'm sorry, Justin.
with the embedding code,
Okay.
it's much more efficient. Usually you'd have to go and get your embed code in a separate spot. Now you can just use the URL, plug it in, and it'll generate the embed code for you. And it'll do that for, I think, about 15 websites now. So it's a little bit more convenient that way. But the one thing about YouTube is if you don't like the first minute, you can, there's an advanced feature and you can start at the 5-minute marker and things like that. Yes?
Something else that bothered me for a while is as we got the technology, we still talking about it as if we as individuals are all going to do our own thing and that we'll all get up to speed on it as experts. I get bothered because I kind of think that as you got this technology, it's really that we may have to move towards a more collaborative way of putting some kind of platform in place. Just for economies of scale, the fact that we can't all be up to speed on absolutely everything. And I think that's something that hasn't come up in the discussion, because my sense of it is, well, it's all what we can do. This is a resource. The answer is, if I haven't got the time to do it, and et cetera, I'm not going to use the resource. I'll do what I can do. End of story.
Actually, it has come up in the discussion in previous sessions that we've done. It's not sort of appropriate with D2L, but we have done that. And that's part of one of the things that we're doing. Like with Catherine leaving from the marketing group and with Jim having left, but he's still here, I'm actually doing recording sessions with Jim Barnes talking about customers and relationships. I'm doing recording sessions with Catherine talking about certain things. I'm doing recording sessions about myself talking about social media, and those video segments are going to be made available to any instructors who are teaching 1210 or 2210 who may not be an expert on social media marketing, but are able to sort of take a 45-second, minute-and-a-half clip from me that sort of starts it, and then they can build on that within the classroom. And going beyond that, there are other things, but it's not really appropriate in our discussions about D2L right now.
What bothers me though is we still have this traditional way of thinking that faculty members kind of do their own thing.
So let's table that for another conversation. We've got another speaker that's coming in about 2 minutes remotely. So rather than keep Justin here with a topic that's not related to D2L, when we've got another speaker coming in, we'll table that and we can have that conversation offline. All right, great. Anybody else have any last minute questions? Fabulous, thank you, Justin. Appreciate the time. Make sure you get your and everything. Okay, perfect.